Hello everyone, my name is Angela Buckley and it's a pleasure to be here today to introduce to you Minister Jackson. I note the esteemed guests, panellists and speakers and thank the committee for bringing everybody together. And in the spirit of being together and now that you're all caffeinated, I'm also assured that you'll also be even further hydrated shortly because there are some water stations coming towards the back of the room, so feel free to access those as and when you need to. What a morning we have had. I'm really so grateful for all the speakers sharing their thoughts on the kinds of city we will leave forward for future generations. I love that slight twist. We're thrilled to sponsor today's event where we've spent the morning delving into the theme of intergenerational equity, a proposition that we value at Mirvac. At Mirvac, our goal is to offer a broader range of housing options and to improve access to housing in desirable urban locations, whether this be for homeowners or for renters. This includes everything from detached houses like those in our Menangle master planned community to terraces at Green Square, build-to-sell apartments at Willoughby, as well as pioneering build-to-rent projects like Live Indigo in Sydney Olympic Park, which has now been home to more than 500 people for more than 3 years. Accessing housing near our cities has become increasingly challenging. The limited supply, tough market conditions, and the construction landscape highlight the urgent need for effective solutions to spur change. We are therefore encouraged by the New South Wales Government's commitment to streamlining planning processes, addressing the backlog of approvals, and implementing a clear strategy to unlock new housing in both infill and greenfield areas. We welcome the ambitious yet vital target of delivering 1.2 million dwellings in 5 years. And as industry leaders, we stand ready to help deliver the government's target, ensuring the production of high-quality, sustainable homes across the housing spectrum, providing security of tenure, flexibility for the future, and of course, community and a sense of belonging. For those, it is now my great pleasure to formally invite our next speaker to the stage to provide the New South Wales Government's view on future generations, Minister Rose Jackson. For those of you who don't know, Minister Jackson has been instrumental in growing youth engagement and politics over the years, recognising the vital contribution that the younger generation makes to the productivity and economic well-being of New South Wales. We're delighted to see this continue. Minister Jackson is the Minister for Water, Housing, Homelessness, Mental Health, Youth and the North Coast, or otherwise known as the Minister for Everything. Your presence today, Minister, is highly valued as we explore crucial issues affecting our future generations, our sector and the impacts of millions of Australians. Following her address, the Minister will be joined by Eamon Waterford, CEO of the Committee of Sydney, for a conversation and Q&A.
Thank you, Angela, for that warm introduction. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Of course, in a conversation about future generations, a particular shout out to our emerging future Indigenous leaders, the incredible young people who are stepping up to be part of the conversation of the world in which they will inherit. So acknowledging our future generations of Indigenous leaders and of course any Aboriginal people joining us for this important conversation. I'd also like to acknowledge my colleagues in the New South Wales Government who have been part of this forum as well. I understand you've just heard from the Treasurer, Daniel Mookie, admiring the problem of housing inequality. Look, he needn't worry, I've got plenty of solutions for him. Just make sure he turns up with his chequebook. We'll see how that goes in the budget. But it is of course true that the New South Wales Government has a deep and enduring commitment to important conversations about what the future of our city looks like, the world our future generations are going to inherit. And so I want to thank the Treasurer for his contributions, and I understand there'll be a range of senior New South Wales Government departmental leaders contributing to today's conversation as well. I'd also like to thank Jacob Ellis from the Office of the Future Generations Commissioner in Wales for travelling quite some way to be with us the world-leading work that is happening in Wales in trialling innovative models for engaging future generations is helping not only, obviously, future generations in Wales, but the rest of us around the world to broaden our thinking about how we might include the voices of young people in our political dialogue. Now, my colleagues, as I mentioned, have and will continue to have important contributions to make today on the substance of the question of what does the future look like? What is the world we are creating for future generations as a consequence of our decisions now? Whether it's on housing, whether it's on the climate, whether it's on energy, whether it's on jobs, whether it's on the economy. I'm more focused in my remarks today on the how. How are we including the voices of the young people who will be the ones to actually live in that future as part of those conversations? The conversations about the what does our future look like? What does the housing market look like? What does the economy look like? What do those jobs look like? They're obviously incredibly important, but good processes lead to good decisions. So my contribution is mainly made wearing my Minister for Youth hat this morning. How are young people directly involved in those conversations? So the first question is, do they want to be part of that conversation? And of course, we all know the stereotype. We all know the common cliche, kids these days, they're careless, they're apathetic, they're lazy, they don't care about politics, they don't care about these conversations. Socrates actually kicked it off. He said, the children now love luxury, they have bad manners, contempt for authority, they show disrespect for elders. Well, nothing's changed. Socrates 2.0 is sitting at a dinner party somewhere saying, kids these days and their TikToks. The problem with this well-worn cliche is that, of course, it's total rubbish. It's not young people who are lazy and careless. It's older generations who are too lazy and careless to show up to the platforms and the forums young people inhabit to engage them in the conversations they want to have. Not all young people may know who Al Gore is, but they care deeply about action on climate change. Young people probably can't afford to see a therapist, and in fact the reality is Gen X have probably clogged up their books anyway. They care deeply, however, about improving our mental health system. Young people probably aren't poring over the pages of the Domain lift-out. In fact, they probably don't even read the Sydney Morning Herald. Sorry, Bevan. However, they do want real solutions on the housing and rental crisis. Now, of course, no disrespect to the Herald, a great paper, and real credit to them for their love of Sydney and elevating the conversation about action on housing in this city and this state. But the reality is younger people are more likely to be following purple pingers on X than reading Koziol's latest article. We know that young people care deeply about the future. It is a hill that I will die on, that young generations, future generations, care about the world they live in and want to have a say in shaping the future. We just need to get better at stepping into the spaces they are creating to hear about it. I know the frustration that young people have trying to crack the edifice of our established political system. I've been there, hollering at the man, literally, demanding with varying levels of success to be heard. I first got involved in politics as a high school student in the late 1990s. I protested the introduction of the GST on sanitary products, which of course ludicrously determined them to be a luxury rather than an essential item, by participating in a piece of avant-garde street theatre dressed up as a tampon. And if anyone wants to know what an awesome homemade tampon costume is, hit me up later, I've got some good suggestions. I protested the appalling racism of Pauline Hanson, which of course burst onto the national scene at that time. We weren't quite at Greta Thunberg levels of school strikes, but we were angry and we hit the streets to show it. Fast forward through a stint in university politics, and I was elected as a 36-year-old young mum into New South Wales Parliament. I'm now the youngest minister in the New South Wales Cabinet and have the honour of being the Minister for Youth. And look, I don't actually consider myself to be particularly young. This is the crux of it. I don't consider myself to be particularly young, but as a bona fide millennial, I'm definitely in the minority in our elected institutions. It remains the case, and I know Secretary Fishburn was talking about local government, that across all three levels of government in this country, our elected representatives are decidedly older than the broader community. The reality is we have some way to go before our models of representative democracy reflect the voices and the faces and the perspectives of young people in the chambers. There are, unfortunately, very few people in the New South Wales Parliament who can really understand the struggles of renting or trying to buy a home in the cost of living crisis, who can truly appreciate the pervasive influence of technology and the impact of its advancement, or who will face the consequences of the decisions we make about climate change. So our representative models of democracy have failed to platform the voice of young people, but that's okay, because we all know that there are far more ways to influence the political system than through purely elected platforms. Yet, time and again, when we're talking about political engagement of young people, we go back to these same old-school tired routines. It's time to realise that the models that we have been using, inviting young people to back-to-back roundtables, simply are not going to inspire genuine interest. If we keep using traditional media as the means to communicate our message, it will not be heard. Obviously, these types of engagement are important, but we need to recognise that build it and they will come is not working. We have to turn up to the places our innovative and talented young people have built for themselves if we want them to be part of this conversation. We have to move beyond giving a small but enthusiastic and self-selecting group of young people one seat at our big government table. We need to get up, walk away from the table and meet them in the forums, spaces, festivals, digital platforms and environments they have created for themselves. In New South Wales, we're doing some of that well. We have a dedicated advocate for children and young people, we have a youth advisory council, we have a minister for youth, but all of that is largely traditional politics. Youth engagement is splintered across the Office for the Advocate of Children and Young People, the Office for Regional Youth and a youth policy team in the Department of Communities and Justice. Even saying that, and most young people will have already switched off, it's extremely unclear how their voices are clearly captured, projected and heard within the New South Wales government. That's why I can inform you all that New South Wales is looking to bring those voices together into a new central youth agency, an elevated whole-of-government youth space within the New South Wales government. It will draw on the themes and concepts championed by the Future Generations Commission, whole-of-government oversight, powerful advocacy roles, long-term policy and strategic engagement. The details of this will be developed in partnership with young people. It's right for me to acknowledge that future generations aren't well heard within the New South Wales government. It isn't right for me to sit around and develop a detailed solution for that without the deep engagement of young people. That would simply be to recreate the cycles of paternalistic and exclusionary politics that we're talking about breaking. So that engagement process will begin, it will be big, it will be deep, it will be comprehensive, and everything will be on the table. Thinking about the future shouldn't be for one summit or one day. It should be for every day. And how do we achieve that within the New South Wales government? We are up for the reform task that challenging question presents to us. A politics about future generations. The reality is, build it and they will come may have worked for Wayne's World. But like Garth's hair, that kind of thinking should be consigned to the early 90s. Times have changed. There are new models, new ideas, new platforms. None of them have been well captured and integrated into our traditional political networks. A political discourse about future generations that embraces innovative new models to include the voices of future generations as part of that conversation, well, Wayne's World was right about that. Party time, I'm trying to do the thing. Party time, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I think we need to start. Yeah, you did well. There we go. Rock on. Fact check. That was actually Wayne's World 2, I think you'll find.
Okay, here we go. Millennial battle it out.
That's fantastic to hear. So with a brief window for us to have a chat, I want to summarise some of the points that you've made here. We need to hear better from young people, and that involves getting to the places that they are rather than expecting them to come to us. And one of the places that you'll be doing that is to build a new integrated office for youth organisation within the state government. Timing?
Well, I mean, I'm keen to get moving. I mean, it's funny, of course, because I say, we need to do something new and different, and that's going to look like a new agency within the New South Wales government, which hardly sounds particularly new and different. But, I mean, of course, the reality is that through government structures, I think if we're thoughtful about some new models, we can actually do some cool stuff. So this year, I would say, but I don't want to rush it because, as I said, I think I do have some ideas. You've got some ideas. I know the Committee for Sydney have been really engaged in these questions, but, I want to have a deep process of engaging with young people about what their expectations are, what might be something a little bit different to the kind of traditional youth council, youth roundtable model. Want to make some time to tease that out.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think that recognising that young people are the experts in their own lives is a really great philosophical basis for this sort of conversation rather than jumping to the solution. A bunch of questions in here that lend itself to your challenge. Are you open to looking at opportunities beyond just sort of machinery of government changes, for example, legislating a Future Generations Commissioner style model similar to the way that Wales has, lowering the voting age for local government elections, these sorts of things?
I mean, certainly we are open to them. As I said, I don't want to prejudge the priorities of young people themselves. We already have a legislated advocate for children and young people in New South Wales, and so as a sort of independent statutory voice. So there is already some foundation for that work that we could build on. But certainly if there is a strong view that a broader remit through some kind of future generations model is what is interesting young people, we are absolutely open to that. As I said, everything's on the table.
I suppose the other element, you've got a lot of other portfolios. How are you bringing youth voices into the conversation around mental health, housing and homelessness, water, and then how do we, I suppose, get those voices into all the other portfolios that just don't conveniently have the Minister for Youth as their representative?
I mean, in the portfolios that I have, I obviously try and be extremely mindful. So in the creation of Homes New South Wales, which is our new social and affordable housing agency, went live 1st of February last week. Very excited about that. Hopefully that's going to be a bit of a game changer. We had a dedicated consultation stream for young people. So, thinking about not just inviting, who's the young person we're going to tack on to this broader conversation, a dedicated consultation stream. In the homelessness portfolio, we're doing a dedicated youth homelessness strategy, again, recognising that the lived experience for homelessness is different to young people. I mean, as you say, that's partly because that's a feature of myself being the minister for those things. I think, one of the other things that I try and do, and I alluded to it in the speech, but, it's worth just making the point explicitly. I make a dedicated effort to turn up to the platforms, the media voices where young people are. And sometimes I cop some flack for that. Sort of minister, the minister for TikTok, is not always said as a compliment, but I wear it as a badge of honour that I actually try. I mean, it's a bit cringe. Look, I don't go in for the dancing and all of that stuff. And, it can be a bit like, hello, fellow young people. But at least it's an effort to say, I am making decisions which in 20, 30, 40 years' time, if you think about the housing market, what we're trying to do in water, these have long-term consequences. You guys are going to be the ones living with that. How do you want to be part of that? And so that, I think, those principles can apply across government. And it is about encouraging others to think about their decisions in that way as well.
So one final question for you. When you're sitting around the cabinet table with the ultimate decision-making body for this state, one thing that really struck me from Jacob's speech earlier is the idea of thinking about what we're leaving ahead for people, leaving forward for people. Or put another way, how do we embed decision-making for benefits that we will never experience ourselves because we'll be long dead? How do we do that in a politically charged environment where you're saying, look, guys, there's an election in 2.5 years. How do we make those sorts of decisions for long-term water investments, housing investments and the like?
I mean, I think, look, if I knew the answer to that, I'd wouldn't need to bother with you. That's right. But I think one of the things is, to your point, I mean, forget the electoral cycle, the daily news cycle, is still a pervasive kind of frame of reference in political decision-making. 4-year horizons can sometimes be long. We're still talking often in 24-hour horizons. So I guess I say that in the problem that you have identified there is a real and genuine one, I think. I don't necessarily think there is a simple structural solution. I've thought about things like, oh, should I require that on cabinet submissions, people who have some familiarity with government would know that when submissions come to cabinet, you do have to kind of hat tip to things like impact on rural and regional New South Wales, impact on finances. Should we have an impact on future generations? I'm actually not sure that is the answer, Eamon, because I think that is trying to force this conversation again into that sort of, that'll just be someone there, bashing out a paragraph on, God, what's this going to look like in 20
I've written
years?
a couple
That's
of those
right.
paragraphs myself.
Yeah, I'm really keen to think about alternatives to that. I think it's got to be cultural, is basically what I'm saying. We should have better structures. We should have strong, robust advocates within government for long-term thinking, but it's really got to be a culture. And part of that is giving young people a chance to hold us more directly to account for whether or not those considerations are being made in our decisions. I think that's fundamentally what we have to try and do.
Fascinating. We are out of time, unfortunately. Can I have a round of applause for the Minister for forward thinking, future thinking, everything else? Thank you, Rose.